Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr, and we are once again at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, backed by a little bit of modern music, which is always nice, following a practice that we did not get to watch, but that's okay. But we did get to talk to secondary coach, co-defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley, and receivers coach Brian Hartline, and several defensive backs and several wide receivers. And we were kind of split up, Tom. How you doing?
I'm good.
All right, good. And so we don't really know everything. Like, I know what the guys I was with said. I don't know what the guys you were with said, and vice versa. So this should be an interesting show where we will each learn what other people had to say right along with you, the listeners. So, Tom, this is what it feels like to be one of the listeners of this show.
Wow, what an honor. What a thrill. I think we deserve 5 stars.
5 stars. Now, hey, since this, can we then rate the show if this is the first time we're hearing it?
I think if you go way, way back in the ratings, before I was actually on the show, I'm pretty sure I did rate the show.
2 stars.
It was
needs more Tom Orr.
I mean, it was the Shannon days, so I was being generous, but it's fine. We've upped our quality. So
that is true, and downgraded our ability to rate the show. So today we learned, Tom, that the defense is going to be better, and they're going to play a lot of receivers.
That sounds like some pretty good football then, huh?
Talking to Tom yesterday, I said, would it surprise you if Josh Proctor's name came up? So I was asking the defensive guys today, why are you forcing more turnovers? And they talked about, the ability to play more zone, the fact that they are more focused on it, and they're punching at the ball, and they are, simply able to intercept more passes. And I asked, Jeff Okudah, Damon Arnett, and Isaiah Pryor, who is leading the camp in interceptions? And Tom, I will give you one guess as to who is leading the camp in interceptions.
Well, I can tell you that I asked Brendan White, who was leading the camp in interceptions, and I will give you one guess who he said.
I will say Josh Proctor.
It was actually Antoine Winfield, which is weird because he hasn't played here in a while. But second was Josh Proctor. Yeah.
If you have past Buckeyes coming onto the field, you need to call security.
Yeah,
and I know they had a bunch of old Buckeyes here. Mm-hmm. They need to stay off the field.
Yeah, if I think I'm already kind of excited for whoever is going to comment on the Josh Proctor story that's coming real soon, because everyone's talking about Josh Proctor.
Yes.
Who then says they don't want to hear about Josh Proctor hype because Josh Proctor hasn't played yet. That's going to be pretty exciting, and the fact that we just know it's coming, it's like anticipating Christmas, which is great. Let's fire up the Josh Proctor hype train. That is not the sound of the Josh Proctor hype train. That is the sound of a gator driving through to pick up tables.
But fired up nonetheless.
Or maybe it is the Josh Proctor hype train.
There you go.
I can't read the side of the thing. Maybe it says Josh Proctor hype train on that side.
I was talking to Damon Arnett, and I asked him, and he said, Josh Proctor, and I was like, well, who does he remind you of? And he's like, you already know. And I'm like, well, put a name to it. He's like, Hook. Malik Hooker. That's who he reminds everybody of. And that is that's something that we have talked about, I think, in the past, but that's a remarkable comparison, assessment. But also, Josh Proctor is in his second year. Malik Hooker was in his third year when he was doing this, but he also flashed as a second-year player, redshirt freshman. And I don't know how often he can get on the field this year, but as Arnett said, Hafley, as he calls him, Hafley is going to play whoever shows that they can play, and that's something that Hafley also said today.
Yeah, if Josh Proctor does not get on the field, it is a function of who is ahead of Josh Proctor on the defensive depth chart. And I mean, this is essentially what we talked about literally 24 hours ago when we were doing our post-Monday show. We are getting we're getting bits and pieces of information because we're not able to watch whole chunks of practices. Right. We're watching little bits of practices. We're talking to individual position groups at a time. We're talking to just Ryan Day sometimes. So we're getting these individual bits and pieces of information, but you're starting to piece things together. On offense, everybody's talking about J.K. Dobbins. On defense, everybody's talking about Josh Proctor. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins being at the top of the depth chart, J.K. Dobbins is going to be the guy at running back. You're going to see him on the field. Josh Proctor, maybe not, but Malik Hooker was someone who took a couple of years before he finally got that opportunity and then just exploded. Josh Proctor could very well be on that same career path.
And going back to, I think, 2015, Tyvis Powell would talk about Malik Hooker. Like, he would say, when I'm gone, don't worry, because this guy next coming up after me is going to be really good. Everybody will see it. And, of course, we did. With Josh Proctor, I think it was Jordan Fuller who said on Monday, the only thing he's really missing right now is just an understanding of the playbook and just getting that sort of thing down and knowing everything he needs to know. But everybody today was talking about his range, just his anticipation, his speed, all of those things you want out of your deep safety. So we'll see how it goes. Hafley will play all the guys who need to play, who all show they deserve to play in these next week and a half. And the way this defense is, with so many, I don't want to say moving parts, but available parts, that is one nice available part you have. And we'll see what it leads to. Brendan White was one of those guys last year who came on late, like you said yesterday. But, Tom, the bullet position was another area of discussion today, and it sounds like there's some more information there.
I feel like we have a lot more insight into what that bullet is, where it fits on the field, when you're going to see the bullet versus the SAM, all of those things. Now, I will preface this by saying that every single question we asked Brendan White about the bullet position started with, well, it depends. So there's a lot of, well, it depends on the opponent personnel, the opponent scheme. If the opponent has a quick, downfield, pass-catching tight end, you're going to see the bullet. If the opponent has more of a blocking tight end, you're going to see the SAM. There's a lot of it depends in terms of situation, in terms of down and distance. A lot of that stuff, I think, is we have been seeking all fall the answer to, like, what is your base defense?
Yeah.
When are you going to play this? When are you going to play that? And I feel like we have a better sense for it now, but there's still a lot of it depends that goes in there. But I do think we learned a lot tonight about where that is in terms of how much of a linebacker position it is, how much of a safety position it is, and it sounds like it's a lot more linebacker than we probably thought.
I wonder if it would be more safety, or not more safety than linebacker, but more safety, some more safety, if maybe Josh Proctor and Isaiah Pryor weren't playing so well. You know, where they would be like, okay, Brendan, we prefer you to also drop back. Because in the spring, he would be playing as much deep safety as he was linebacker. Now maybe it's, because that is still a question of, okay, well, if the bullet's not out there, is Brendan White is he at safety? Is he one of the two deep safeties with Jordan Fuller? Or is that a situation where it's Josh Proctor, or is it Isaiah Pryor as one of those, whoever wins that job? So we still don't know who the second deep safety is going to be. And the way things are going right now, they may not need Brendan White because they've got Josh Proctor.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if he fit in there. I mean, we've talked a little bit about, does Shaun Wade fit in somewhere in that mix? Does he take some of the snaps in, that they shift away from like two true safeties and they have him in there instead? And I don't know that they know the answer. Now, when we asked Jeff Hafley, when we asked Brian Hartline about depth charts and who would be your guys right now, no one wants to say, oh, these are my 6 guys right now, or this is, like, it's still there. They say they haven't thought about it yet. They say they haven't put a depth chart together. And, that's maybe possibly somewhat true. But it does seem like the way they're viewing that bullet position is more linebacker than safety. Brendan White said he's viewing it more as a linebacker position. He said it is a read the run first, then drop back for the pass. It is a run first responsibility position because you are replacing a linebacker on the field. So that tells you that it's interesting that it sounds like it is, rather than being sort of interchangeable with the safety, it sounds like that is really just a personnel matchup, which of these players who are basically linebackers, and we're just not calling one of them a linebacker, which of these players who are basically linebackers are going to be a better matchup for the opponent personnel.
And I think back to Michigan's example, because I don't recall seeing much of Khaleke Hudson at safety, but Jabril Peppers did drop back and play safety. And those two guys played the same position. So I also wonder if it's a matter of availability in terms of who else do you have that can play deep safety. And maybe they didn't like Hudson doing that. They liked Peppers doing it. He was able to do it. Maybe Hudson wasn't. We know that Brendan White has been a pretty good zone deep safety like he showed last year.
Right.
Maybe it's a lot to ask of it is a lot to ask of somebody to, you be a linebacker on first and second down, then go be a safety on third down. That's a lot to ask, especially if you have the depth that you don't need to ask that guy to do that.
Yeah. And there were a couple interesting things with Brendan White tonight that he talked about. First of all, one of the questions I think people might have had with him as the Gator drives ever closer, we are just a magnet for ATVs in this place. He was asked, have you put on weight to get a little bigger to be more linebacker size? He said no. He's right at the same weight. He was at 215 last year. He's playing right at 215. He said maybe to 220 this year. So he is not like bulked up 15 pounds to play a linebacker role. He's still that sort of safety size. The other thing he said was interesting, and I honestly hadn't thought about this because he bounced around a lot early in his career in terms of position. He was recruited as a linebacker. He never really played linebacker at Ohio State, and he said he really has never played linebacker in his career. But that was actually what he was recruited as when he came to Ohio State. So he said that was kind of cool to sort of be, he's not officially a linebacker, but it sure sounds like there's a lot of overlap between him and the linebacker.
Yeah, because he was a guy who, before he was even enrolled, was at practice dressed with the linebackers during bull prep. And then came in as a wide receiver because Noah Brown went down, I believe. And so the need was at wide receiver for him. And then, of course, safety. And now Bullitt, next year, defensive end, perhaps defensive tackle if he gets a prescription for Nick Petit-Frere's diet.
Quarterback, who's to say? I mean, you lose Chris Jugganoff after this year, so maybe he could. He played some wide receiver when he came in. I mean, he's been all over the place. So, and it's interesting. He's one of those guys where sometimes those guys who bounce from position to position never really find a home, and it's just kind of like, it never really clicked, never found the right spot. We've talked about that with like Jashon Cornell, and it seems like he finally has maybe found his spot inside this year at the 3-tech, but he kind of has bounced between the defensive end to defensive tackle, back to defensive end, now back to defensive tackle. Brendan White did that kind of hop around thing at the beginning of his career. It sure seems like he has found his spot now.
Yeah, yep. You mentioned Jashon Cornell, which takes us to the defensive line. I suppose we should address the report from Tim May.
Yes.
That Jonathon Cooper has a high ankle sprain, perhaps. Nobody was confirming anything today under the new regime. We don't get to really talk about injuries, but Jonathon Cooper could be out a while. I had somebody on the message board say that Jashon Cornell should move back outside, to which I vehemently disagreed, because if you've got Cornell finally at home at his place and you recruited 57 defensive ends in the last 2 years, let those guys go play. And we talked to Chase Young on Monday, and when we talk to people and we ask about the younger defensive ends, Tyreek Smith always comes up. He's usually the first guy to come up. And so now it's, if this report is true and Cooper is out for a little while, for a few weeks, maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks, depending, then you've got Tyreek Smith, you've got Tyler Friday, see what happens with Noah Potter and Zach Harrison, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Alex Williams. There's a number of options there. I don't think you pull over Jashon Cornell and move him from where he's been working well and won a starting job.
Well, you would be moving a guy from a position where he's currently starting and you've got pretty decent depth to put him at a position where he would then be starting, and also you have pretty good depth, and then so you're just playing your second guy at a position where you have pretty good depth, and you can do that in the inside, you can do that on the outside. He's been working on the inside all spring, all fall. Keep him there. Don't mess with a good thing right now. If he was repping with the 2s or the 3s inside, then sure, maybe you could think about it. But yeah, they have everything we've heard about Tyreek Smith. Tyreek Smith played as a true freshman last year.
Was in the Rushman package.
In the Rushman package, played in meaningful games. Tyler Friday played a decent number of snaps as a true freshman, again, in a pretty deep room. So these are guys who they're comfortable with. These are not new guys they're hauling in off the street. These are not freshmen that need to gain 20 pounds where they're throwing them out there. These are guys who were capable of playing at the level that Larry Johnson expects a year ago. So with another year, another spring, another fall, another year in the weight room under their belts, there should be no concern.
Let me run this by you. He does have a red shirt available, and I don't like talking this far in advance about an injury that has not been confirmed, but we're just talking here. If he is available after 6 games, do you hold him for those last 4? If he's willing to come back next year, do you hold him for those that last 4 stretch run and get a free year out of him down the stretch? What you've got Penn State, Michigan. Well, maybe you hold him for the Michigan game, or maybe you hold him. You probably play him against Penn State just because you have to win these games to get to the final couple games. But you hold him for Penn State, Michigan, Big Ten championship game, a playoff game. I mean, is that outrageous?
It's not outrageous. I think there are a couple things you would have to establish before you could figure out how likely that was. I mean, first thing, okay, how serious is the injury right now? If he's going to be able to come back in week 3, then no, they're obviously not going to do that. How interested is he in, where does he think he fits right now? Where does he think he projects as a NFL prospect right now? How much does he think another year at Ohio State could benefit him in improving that projection? If he's not going to, if he is, and this is not me playing NFL scout, I'm just going to pick a number. If he projects as a 3rd-round defensive end right now, and there's not, that whatever his limitations are not things that he could fix with another year, then there's not much point in coming back. If he projects as a 3rd-rounder right now, but he's being told if you fix this, or you add another 15 pounds, or you whatever, that's going to take another year, maybe you do. But, what is the scouting saying right now? How serious is the injury? How interested is he in coming back or not coming back? I mean, there's a whole lot of questions.
We're just talking.
That is a fun message board question, and let's establish how serious the injury is as a necessary first step to having this conversation in a kind of responsible way.
Well, sure, if you want to be responsible. But that's not what this show is about, Tom. We also, as we mentioned, talked to the receivers. Although, one other thing about Damon Arnett and Jeff Okudah both, while we're still talking about the defense, and tell me if you're surprised by this, they like this defense. They like the fact that, as Damon Arnett said, you can play it with a clear mind. You can just go play. You can just go ball. And that was not the case the past couple of years, if that would surprise you. And you see these guys, and the fact that they're playing zone and they're happy about it, and it's not just zone, we know that, but Jeff Okudah was asked, and they were both asked, could you, at this point last year, if somebody said you're going to be playing a bunch of zone, how would you have reacted to that? And they were both like, well, Ohio State is back then Ohio State is a press man school. And you think back to Damon Arnett was leaving, after the season, and he was from a press man program, press man school. And the fact that he got talked into coming back to play zone, it's hard to believe. But as we mentioned in the past, once he talked to Hafley, he didn't want to not be a part of this. He didn't want to see this from afar. And just the way the corners are responding to this defense, they all have the quote unquote chip on their shoulder and all of that, and you get tired of talking about it, but they know what was said about them last year. And as Damon Arnett said, the reset has been pressed, they pressed the reset button. Last year is gone, and I think one of his last statements were the bullets are back.
Yeah, and I mean, literally the bullet is here now, and the silver bullets. I mean, this is one of these conversations that you have with all of these college football teams with storied defensive history, and you have to kind of roll your eyes this time of year because every year in Nebraska, this is the year the black shirts are back.
Baby.
The black shirts are back, and then they give up 900 yards in their season opener to Northern Illinois or Troy or whatever, and then nope, it's the same thing as last year, and then next year, rewind the tape, press it again.
Could this be the year for the black shirts?
Could it be? So you kind of have to take some of that talk with okay, it's August, this is the time of year that everyone says that the fill in the blank is back, and we're going to get back to an aggressive attacking mentality on defense, and we're going to be multiple in offense, and
balanced.
We're gonna go for it on fourth down and not make Tom yell up at the press box, and it's gonna be great. And then the game starts. So we'll see how that all goes. Not to be Captain Bring Down here, but we'll see how that goes. The one thing that has been extraordinarily consistent, and this is true because this is the stuff that we have been saying for a long time, so we know it's not just confirmation bias. We know that means they're right. Every single time you talk to a player about what's different this year, they talk about how it's simple and how they're relying on their skill and relying on their players to go get the ball and go attack and go make plays. And, I don't think that this is a big surprise to anyone who watched last year. It was a little complicated. We've talked about this once or 17 times this year. But they are simplifying things. They're leaning on that talent because they do have that talent advantage against basically everyone they play on defense. So you kind of lean on that talent. You let those guys go make plays. You put those defensive backs, because they're in zone, because they're off their guys a little bit, they can read the quarterback a little better. You can break on the ball a little bit better. You can make plays a little bit more than you did last year. All of these things that you are probably sick of hearing us talk about, we keep talking to these defensive players, and they keep telling us the same things over and over again.
They're also getting results.
Yes, and
that's why we're talking about it.
And they're seeing the results on the practice field, which is...
We're not saying this should happen. It is happening.
Right. This is happening, and this is how it's playing out on the practice field, and they're getting the results you would expect them to get. The one thing that I think it was Isaiah Pryor or Brandon White talked about was they are putting guys in a position where there's a little more help there for them. If one guy misses a play, there's a little more help there for them to not have one guy be a little bit out of place or get blocked, and then Anthony McFarland is going 75 yards.
Well, and you say that, and I immediately think of Isaiah Pryor being the last line of defense so often last year and taking a bad angle, because back then it would look like he's just delayed in the process of where I need to be, and just that little split second was all it took for a fast player to have the better angle and be gone 70 yards. And not having that, getting that split second back, or not even having to worry about it, especially makes you even faster. Not just the fact that you get that time back, but you don't even worry about it. You're not even thinking about it. You're just going after the ball. You're making the play, going where you're supposed to be going because you don't have as many options. You talk to the guys, and they're all excited. But as you said, Tom, it's all going to be completely different once the game starts, and it's going to be a disaster, just as you said.
I don't think I'm expecting disaster, but this is the time of year when you do hear even the teams that are going to have bad seasons are talking about how they're going to have good seasons this year. I mean, you go back to 2011, and this is the year that Ohio State is going to shock the world and silence the doubters, and that's all great until they lose to Miami, and then all of a sudden the roof falls in. That doesn't happen very often around here, but it happens to a lot of programs across the country. Every program in the country right now is optimistic, and probably 95% of them are
lying
right now. No, they're actually, they really are optimistic, but they are probably, if you ask them to guess how many wins they're going to have, they would probably be high by an average of about 2.5 wins per program. If you added them all up, everyone's winning percentage would be about 700 or so, and because of math, we should really be 500.
Right. Well, if you ask Chris Ash, how many wins are you expecting? And he says, I think 3 would be a good year. I mean, that's not an answer you can give, and that's where they come in. Well, we don't measure success by wins. They're like, really, how do you measure it? By height, of course.
By what? How much of my buyout I'm going to get at the end of this year?
By TV revenue, you idiots. We did talk to the receivers. Let's see, we had Chris Olave out. I did not talk to him. Tom, you did not talk to him.
I did not talk to Chris Olave. I talked
Ben Victor, talked to him a couple minutes, but he was out here.
Mm-hmm. I was with Brian Hartline basically the whole time.
I didn't see any other receivers.
I did not see any other receivers. Austin Mack would obviously normally have been one of the guys
right.
out. Austin Mack.
What was the injury update on him?
Yeah, the injury update on him is that Brian Hartline is not going to give injury updates, and we should refer to Ryan Day, who was not speaking this evening and in general does not give injury updates. So
Damon Arnett was wearing a cast. I asked him, what's up? He's like, oh, I'm good. So you wanted an injury update. Cast on his right wrist, right hand, but he's fine.
Is it like a fashion accessory? Is that what the kids are wearing these days?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Did you ask to sign his cast?
It was black. So I don't know that you can really sign it unless you have like one of those...
Whiteout.
Do they still make that, though?
I assume so.
Probably. I don't think they do.
It was not on my kid's school supply list, but I'm sure someone makes it somewhere. So Brian Hartline, a couple minor things with him. He talked about, someone asked him about Garrett Wilson and keeping Garrett Wilson's expectations in check for this year, basically. Because, remember back to the spring game, and Garrett Wilson came in with the 5-star ranking. Garrett Wilson came in with, if you go back through those Urban Meyer text messages through the Zach Wilson FOIA, Urban Meyer was pretty darn high on Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson had that big catch in the spring game. And someone asked him, so, okay, how do you kind of keep him in check and not let him get too far out over his skis, basically, right now? And Brian Hartline said, well, you guys are all talking about what a great catch that was. I'm telling him, well, you kind of lost leverage there, and your route tree wasn't great there, and also you did these 3 things wrong.
That's
and
good.
So you don't focus on the pat on the back. You focus on, okay, here's how you get better. Yeah. You're not a finished product yet just because you went up and caught a ball over the 2nd or 3rd string corner. That was a nice play. Now here's how you do it better the next time. So, and he is...
He is disappointed dad Twitter.
He is. He is. Well, I tweeted out a quote from him later when he talked about the fact that he wasn't quite ready to commit to Garrett Wilson being in that top 6. It sounded like he was in the mix. Sounded like he expected him to play. And a lot of the responses were like, yeah, okay, all right, sure. And he's probably somewhere. He's going to be somewhere in there. Whether he's in that top 6 for game 1, yeah, we'll see, maybe. But he's someone who it sure sounds like he's going to have a role on this team at some point this year.
Yeah, and when I asked Hartline, we've talked in the past about, maybe in the last show or last week, about the different body types at the different positions, with Z having a tall guy, a small guy, X having a tall guy and small guy, and how that, he said it probably does make life more difficult for defenses, but he's more worried about making these receivers more well-rounded and able to go anywhere and be plugged in at any position, because, as he said, you'll have to do that in the NFL. And so that's really where Garrett Wilson is going to be as a sophomore, as a junior, or even in October, we'll see. And he's just trying to get him experience at whatever position they need right now. But yeah, he's going to be on the field. I don't know if he's going to be in the rotation. There might be. You can't keep him off the field, Tom. I don't care what you say.
Yeah.
I know you're very down on him, but it's interesting that you say that with Hartline, is saying, well, all of these things that he could do better. And the good news about him is he's a hard worker, and he does work on getting those things better. So will he be in the top 6 by October, November? I would be pretty surprised if he isn't, and I don't think it would take an injury like it did for Chris Olave last year.
No, and I could very easily see it being after one of the bye weeks. That they have a bye week 6 games into the season. They have a bye week 8 games into the season. It would not shock me if, at the very latest, after that first bye week, he was kind of in that top 6. And quite possibly sooner. And you've got games early in the year where you're going to see more than that top six.
Yeah.
So
you'll see 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, for sure. And there are, I think everyone's kind of looking at this like, well, it's only Ben Victor and Austin Mack and Chris Olave and KJ Hill really returning from last year, but CJ Saunders is a captain now. You're hearing people talk up CJ Saunders. Mm-hmm. Brian Hartline was talking up Jalen Gill. Brian Hartline was talking up Jalen Harris. Elijah Gardner. I mean, there are other guys who were not in that top six last year who have been here a while, have put themselves in a position to potentially be in that top six, and they might start the year in that top six, and then maybe the top six expands to a top 7 or so, or top 8, or maybe someone, Garrett Wilson jumps someone.
Yeah. And we didn't even mention Ted Ginn Jr., Jameson Williams. Anything else, Tom? We're at that 30-minute mark, and they're turning out the lights here at the WAC, and they probably want us to leave.
Well, I asked on the board if anyone had any questions, and Oscar Sierra Uniform was the only one who posted something in the form of a question. He said they haven't announced who the starting kicker is yet. Why are they trying to keep it a secret? I think it's going to be Blake Hallbill. It seems like that's...
Nice.
Hey,
go tonight.
Good. How you doing? Oh.
So the answer is it'll be Blake Hallbill, and the answer is even when there's only 3 people in this entire building, someone walks by to stop to talk to us and ask how we're doing.
We could have stopped the show a couple minutes earlier.
History's greatest superpower. I think it's safe to say.
Thank you all for listening to, and you got a little bit of a train wreck in there at the end,
mm-hmm.
just as you wanted, and you only had to wait 31 minutes and 15 seconds for it. So
we start with the Josh Proctor hype train. We end with the Buckeye Weekly train wreck.
There you go. Perfect timing. And we will talk to you later. I don't know that we'll have time tomorrow.
We'll see.
We'll see. I've got a YouTube thing.
We have linebackers and tight ends
and running backs.
We'll try.
Wednesday. Let's try.
We'll see. We'll see what we can do. But you've gotten 2 shows already this week, so be grateful for what you have. And
jeez, Tom, I was going to thank you for listening, but Tom wanted to be.
It was a parenting moment. No, was that not? Did I misread the room? Okay.
All right. We will then probably talk to you tomorrow.